Hello, I'm Kirk Lyons, Chief Trial Counsel of the Southern Legal Resource Center. This is part 3 of What is a Confederate Southern American? Before we continue on that, and I'm going to give you some background law, it's important to understand why are we Confederate Southern Americans? Why do we need to assert our national origin status on the census and in any way in our daily lives? Why is that important? Well, for one thing, those of us in the Confederate community that are proud of the Confederate Battle flag, proud of our Confederate heritage, the singing of Dixie and all of that, have been for over 20 years trying to explain to liberals, to the left, to the media, to government, that the separation between those of us in the Confederate community and extremists who abuse or misuse the battle flag, whether they be hate groups or whatever. We've been explaining the difference between us and them for over 20 years. The government doesn't get it. The left doesn't get it. They just go right on bashing us and just assuming that we're all Ku Kluxers with our hoods and sheets hidden under the bed somewhere. And just at any moment, as long as we display that Confederate battle flag, at some point that hood's going to come back out, which is, of course, hogwash. It's part of the liberal paradigm, though. We can't convince them. They are not going to be convinced. It is convenient for their agenda for us to be demonized and marginalized. And that is what we're seeing. Those of us that are proud of our Confederate ancestry are being marginalized and pushed to the side of the political spectrum. They want us to end up over there with those extremists. And that's what we must stop. We must continue to claim the center, that we are legitimate, that we are mainstream, we are nonviolent, but we assert our rights and don't go to the back of the bus. Or even worse, we refuse to get off the bus, which is where most of them would have us. So, the problem is, the Southern Legal Resource Center filed 5 or 6 lawsuits back in the 2000s, from about 2000 to 2006, trying to vindicate Confederate Southern Americans in court, to force the federal court system to recognize Confederate Southern Americans. The problem is, we had a very, very hostile judicial system. Conservative judges would not want to give us a ruling because they want no expansion of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Liberal judges will not give us a ruling because they are against anything Confederate, anything that smacks of a Confederate. As a matter of fact, as I have said for many years, there's an institutional bias against all things Confederate in the court system. And you can take your pick which one I'm talking about, whether it be federal or most states. There's an institutional bias against Confederate symbols. So the courts were very hostile and smashed our lawsuits. They crushed them. They put their big judicial thumb on us. And why? Because we did not have popular support. Because we had not done active consciousness raising, they're using a 1960s term, to find thousands, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of Southerners who are proud of their Confederate ancestry, who would advocate in the public forum that they are a national origin group deserving of legal protection. Judges saw us and saw they represent very few people, dismissed their lawsuit, and they did. So we're trying again. This time we want to build a consensus. We want to find hundreds of thousands, if not millions of Southerners who are willing to stand up and be counted, to be proud of their Confederate ancestry, so that we can secure legal protection for Confederate Southern Americans while there is still time to do so. The demographic shift in this country is underway. The unprecedented illegal immigration and legal immigration is changing the demographics of our country, and especially the South, and we must nail down this legal protection now. We must nail this protection down now while we still have the power to do so. No people can really thrive without some access to legal protection and legal services, and the Confederate Southern American community right now has almost no influence, no access to legal representation, no access to sympathetic representation. We must nail that down now. As I said, the courts are not going to give us that ruling. They are not going to be favorable to us. They're going to be extremely hostile. So we must show their hypocrisy to them, and that's what will be in part 4. And we must turn this around while we can, while our children and grandchildren are not going to be enslaved by an overweening, centralized, multicultural nation that has no time for Confederate Southern Americans. So, if you enjoyed this DVD and found it informative, please make a generous contribution to The Southern Eagle Resource Center, P.O. Box 1235, Black Mountain, North Carolina 28711. You can write us at SLRC@slrc-csa.org. Call us at 828-669-5189. Our website is www.slrc-csa.org. Check us out on Facebook. Thank you.